leave it. Madhava, Gopi Janaba Lama Girivardhari. Gopi Janaba Lama Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Paramahamsa, Parivajagacharya Asta Tarasata Sisi Maris Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Here's a very nice photograph of the celebrated Jaladuta. And I understand we've been on a very tight schedule, and I made a commitment that I'm going to keep the schedule here at the temple too. So I've got 40 minutes, and then they're going to give me the hook. So I may speak a little fast because I want to cover everything. Malati, can you see the screen from way back there? Malati? Yeah, okay, don't worry about it, okay. Title, Extraordinary Journey. Subtitle, One Man's Improbable Journey into a Million Hearts. So you all know, but now we're going to go back in time to when Srila Prabhupada was 25 years old and living in Calcutta. And this painting is a very nice painting of Srila Prabhupada meeting for the first time with Bhaktisiddhanta on the rooftop of a property in Ulta Dunga Junction Road. Now it looks a little different than it looked then. They've made it very nice. It's okay. So there's Srila Prabhupada, and in the foreground with a little mustache there, that's Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada, when he was 25, he was a college student, married, and was a Gandhi follower. Because, you know, intellectual people at his time, that's what they did. He's a Gandhi follower. So the very first meeting, the way that it's described, practically as soon as Srila Prabhupada sat down, he was brought by a friend because Prabhupada, his friend said, let's go. Here there's this wonderful sadhu, and Prabhupada said, no. My father, he brought so many sadhus to our home, and they weren't really sadhus, and I've met so many sadhus. Thanks, but no thanks. And the reply was, no, he's special, please, trust me, we're friends, I want you to meet him. So he relented and he went. And practically as soon as he sat down, immediately Bhaktisiddhanta pointed him out. He singled him out. You are an educated young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message throughout the whole world? Didn't waste any time. And that was 1922, when Srila Prabhupada was 25 years old, and 14 years later he got the very same message in a letter. Become an English preacher and spread Krishna consciousness throughout the Western world. Same message. It went in. However, initially it didn't go in. Prabhupada objected, or he voiced a Gandhi message. Who will hear your Chaitanya's message? We're a dependent country. First, India must become independent. Swaraj, freedom from the British. How can we spread Indian culture if we're under British rule? Reasonable. Outside of India, who's going to listen? 20 minutes a response to that question. Very comprehensive. Here's some little pieces. In a deep voice, that Krishna consciousness didn't have to wait for a change of Indian politics, nor was it dependent on who ruled. Krishna consciousness was so important, so exclusively important, it could not wait. Politics are always changing, but there's one eternal truth. No, you notice this is a certain painting of, and the posture of Srila Prabhupada's right, or Bhaktisiddhanta's right hand, is taken from a photograph. Whether one power or another ruled was a temporary situation, but the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness, and the real self is the spirit soul. No man-made political system, therefore, could actually help humanity. This was the verdict of the Vedic scriptures and the line of spiritual masters. 20 minutes worth. Here's some. Although everyone is an eternal servant of God, when one takes himself to be the temporary body and regards the nation of his birth as worshipable, he comes under illusion. The leaders and followers of the world's political movements, including the movement of Swaraj, were simply cultivating this illusion. Like, he put on the boxing gloves and let Prabhupada have it. Real welfare work, whether individual, social, or political, should help prepare a person for his next life and help him reestablish his eternal relationship with the Supreme, etc. Now, Prabhupada's comment later was, since childhood he was always good at debate, and he never lost a debate. It doesn't matter what the topic was. But for the first time, he was defeated in a debate, and he was very happy. Because I've met someone that has genuine transcendental wisdom. So remember that year they met for the first time in 1922, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur offered initiation in 1933 in Allahabad, in Prayag, and he did something quite unusual. He gave him first and second initiation at the same time. And that's pretty quick. But, later, 35, 2 years after his initiation, this shows Srila Prabhupada. The background, look carefully, it's Radhakund. And annually, Bhaktisiddhanta took devotees to places of pilgrimage in Vrindavan. And one year, November 1935, Prabhupada was with him. And Bhaktisiddhanta gave the second big instruction that went into his heart. I had a desire to print some books. If you ever get money, print books. Short and direct. And that went in. And that's a dedication to those two missions. 36, 1 year later, 1 year and 1 month, I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of the other members, meaning outside of India. Outside of India, there's multiple languages, but outside of India, people aren't conversant with the Indian languages. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. Now, he's first saying English, but to people who don't speak our language means anywhere. There's details that time doesn't permit. During this period of time, Srila Prabhupada had an opportunity, he thought, to go to Tokyo, which wasn't English speaking. Then it didn't happen for different reasons. That's a whole other topic. But he was empowered to go outside of India, which was Bhaktisiddhanta's empowerment, which was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's empowerment, which was Lord Chaitanya's empowerment, and he received that empowerment. I have every hope you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teachings unto the people in general, as well as philosophers and religionists. Notice, people in general, as well as certain class of individuals, that they're movers of people in general. So, next, Prabhupada started a habit that became the habit for the rest of his life, that in the wee hours of the morning, when most people are horizontal, he was writing. And the image shows the persons who inspired their writing are these two, Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta. Srila Prabhupada took both these instructions as his life's mission, a period of deep reflection and study. Followed Srila Prabhupada's meeting with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada greatly revered this scholarly, spiritual teacher and read his writings assiduously, and Bhaktisiddhanta wrote assiduously. The life and works of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, also revealed much to Srila Prabhupada about the spiritual heritage of Krishna consciousness and helped inspire him to propagate the science of devotional service throughout the English language, or through the English language. Now, many of you will know, but some of you may not know. The year that Srila Prabhupada was born was 1896. In the year of 1896, also Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a book and distributed it to universities all around the world, because philosophers and educated people, at least his view was at least these people should know who was Lord Chaitanya. Because Lord Chaitanya wasn't so well known in India, what to speak of outside of India, but he wanted people to know. On the year of Prabhupada's birth, he did it. Some number of copies out of his own pocket, in a two-part. It's important. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts. Part 1 was his life. Part 2 was his precepts. Part 1 was a mini summary of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And precepts in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's 100 books, about 90% of those 100 books had the following: the 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya, 1 through 10. So it's like simple, but profound. And that was the second half of the book, the Dasamula Tattva, the 10 essential teachings, life and teaching, life and precepts of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And etc., etc., etc. So the way in which Srila Prabhupada received the summary distilled version of Gaudiya Vaishnavism was through these two great personalities. And in 1953, at the age of 57, he had developed a very well-established pharmaceutical business. His birth name was Abai, and the family name was De, D-E, Abai De. When he was initiated, it became Abai Charan De, or Abai Charan Das. And when he took sannyas, it became A.C., that's Abai Charan, Bhaktivedanta, given by Bhaktisiddhanta, gave the name Bhaktivedanta Swami, and that's the name he went by, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So during this period of time, he's still a householder. You see with a nice little mustache there in the middle of his advertisement. And, the pharmaceutical business was rising and becoming very, it was like very successful. It was predicted by astrologers that he would become one of the most successful, wealthy Indian people. And then Krishna pulled the plug. And, it turned him upside down, but he understood this is Krishna's arrangement and accepted it as Krishna's arrangement. And in course of time, some other things happened without all those other things, and he decided it's time that I should retire from household life and my business life and dedicate myself to this mission that Bhaktisiddhanta entrusted me with, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, etc. The disciplic succession. And so he accepted the Vanaprastha stage of life, and when he was 60 years old, this is a photograph of Keshigat. And you see the Madan Mohan temple in the background, and it's a nice Jamuna River photograph. And he accepted residence in a very simple place. Here's the room in that very simple place. He went from being a wealthy householder to living in a little room. And the little room where he stayed, he had a certain number of steps to walk up to, and there was 4 walls. And there was no sink, there was no toilet, there was no kitchen, there's 4 walls. And this is where he began the Hare Krishna movement. They didn't call it that at that time. It was just, he was writing, translating and writing commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, and also following Bhaktisiddhanta, some magazine. He called his magazine. Bhaktisiddhanta had different names, one in Hindi, one in English, one in Bengali. Prabhupada calls his magazine Back to Godhead. We're all familiar with that one. But it started way back. And he would go regularly into Delhi from Vrindavan in his Vanaprastha stage to preach from the Back to Godhead magazine, but he was also wanting to find people who could help sponsor the printing of Srimad Bhagavatam, because this time he left all his wealth, whatever he had, with his family. He didn't take anything. So he was depending on whatever Krishna sent. And Back to Godhead magazine was a way to meet people and find potential donors for his publication work while he was working on Srimad Bhagavatam. And as time passed, there was one sannyasi in Mathura, also a godbrother of his, Keshava Maharaj. There's a nice story about Keshava Maharaj, but time doesn't permit. So here's a photograph of Prabhupada accepting sannyas in 1959. So it's A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And the Prabhupada title came later. So on either side, two sannyasis. Keshava Maharaj was encouraging him. Prabhupada was feeling not qualified in all of those statements. But he was insisting, you must, because Bhaktisiddhanta has given you this important responsibility, and it'll facilitate your service to Bhaktisiddhanta, so do for that reason. And so he accepted sannyas, 1959. And in course of time, he shifted from where he was by Keshikat to the Radha Damodar temple. There's some details of how that happened. Vishvambar Goswami, who had become very dear to Prabhupada and vice versa. Vishvambar Goswami was the chief priest of the Radharaman temple, and they loved each other very much. Vishvambar Goswami happened to know the head priest or the head person at the Radha Damodar temple, and there were 2 rooms, and he persuaded that organizer to give those rooms to this Swami. He'll make good use of them. So, etc., etc., Prabhupada shifted from Keshigat to the Radha Damodar temple. And the photograph was taken much later, obviously, but Prabhupada is looking out the window while he's taking his prasadam, and he's looking at the samadhi of Rupa Goswami. And here's a photograph during the daylight hours of the samadhi of Rupa Goswami. And there's details of how the samadhi of Rupa Goswami was established. It was established by Jiva. Jiva was his only disciple, Jiva Goswami. And when Rupa Goswami left this world, he placed his body in samadhi in the courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple, and there's the samadhi. Many times, I'm going to tell a nice story in a moment, of Srila Prabhupada praying intently. You see that the letters are very small, but I read it. Hey Rupa, in the dead of night, in Vrindavan there weren't street lights and flashlights and any of those kind of things. It was just dark of night. And Prabhupada had a broom, and with the broom he was sweeping in front of his samadhi, calling out loudly, Hey Rupa, hey Sanatan, hey Gurudev, please give me your mercy. Without your mercy I cannot do anything. Give me the mercy. Give me the strength that I may fulfill your orders. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta gave the order, but he's the order deliverer from the disciplic succession, from his father and from Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya. He's depending fully on their mercy. On one occasion, Srila Prabhupada had this vision, one of those nights that he was working. Rupa Goswami appeared before him. No, transcendentally past personalities can manifest themselves, and they manifested himself to Prabhupada, reassuring Prabhupada, encouraging Prabhupada, hearing the fervent prayer of Prabhupada. Maharaj, don't worry about anything. Go ahead and travel to the West and preach. Just preach the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the chanting of Hare Krishna. You will be successful, I guarantee, because I'll be right there with you all the time. Wow. Now, Some of the devotees were engaged in interviewing individuals. One of those individuals they interviewed was this fellow. It's actually the fellow. It's not just something off the internet. This is Hridayananda Babaji Maharaj. This fellow, this Babaji, was born at Radhakund, and he had been 78 years a pujari, and he lived near the Radha Damodar temple. And the devotees that were doing these interviews sat down with him and asked him if he knew Srila Prabhupada. And the Babaji began to cry. I'm going to try to not cry as I read this, because it's very moving. Never have I seen anyone do sadhana like he did. I've lived my life in Braja, and I've never seen anyone like him. Prabhupada did many arduous things. He worked very hard at the Radha Damodar temple. At that time, it was very austere, undeveloped, very muddy and dirty with no facilities. And he described he would hear him in the dead of night, because he lived nearby. Loud enough, he wasn't living in the compound, it was nearby, you could hear him. And went in to see what's going on. And Prabhupada is on his hands and knees before the samadhi of Rupa Goswami, praying for the strength, the capacity, the empowerment. So then during the interview, this Babaji said, when I heard that it was actually he who had been chosen by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra around the world, I was not surprised. So something happened after that. So Prabhupada's feeling, I need the mercy, but also feeling the weight of the mandate. So something happened in the course of his preaching. In the course of his preaching, he was at a person's house, a Mathura businessman in Agra. Mathura businessman in Agra. And in the course of that meeting with this, home program, this gentleman, Mr. Agarwal, confided his heart in Prabhupada and said, my son Gopal, he went to America to become an engineer. And he married an American lady so he could get his green card. I'm worried about my son. And Prabhupada did whatever Prabhupada did, and then later he wrote a letter to Gopal Agarwal and said, would you be so kind as to send me a letter of invitation, so with that letter of invitation I can get a 30-day tourist visa to go to America? So Prabhupada got such a letter. Many of you have seen this nice little photograph of Prabhupada playing with bridge. Little boy. This is the big boy. This is bridge grown up. And so Gopal wrote the letter. Prabhupada went to the immigration department, and sure enough, he got a visa. Now he had to get a passport to get the visa, but he didn't have anything. His residence was the Radha Damodar temple, and so little by little by little. So now he's working on the Bhagavatam, got some donors to pay for the printing. He hadn't finished yet. And now he's got a visa and the mandate. Now how to get there. So in the course of circumstances, one of the places he visited was in Bombay, and you recognize Sumati Morarji. She was the owner of a steamship company, one of which was the Jaladuta, the Scindia Steamship Company. So Prabhupada asked her, you own cargo ships. Please give me one room in one of your cargo ships that's going to America. And she rained on the parade. She said, no, Swamiji, you're old and you've never had climate like that, and crossing the sea, and you won't live. And Prabhupada so it took several times around, and finally she relented. So Prabhupada has this passport, and he has a visa, and he has transportation, he has the mandate, and he's feeling unqualified. but somehow. And there we go. Prabhupada's getting on the Jaladuta. There's the date of his departure in Calcutta. It said the ship is from Bombay, but the place where he got on the ship is in Calcutta. There's Friday, August 13, 1965. And a 38-day journey, and Yadovar isn't here. But Yadovar was eventually given the diary that Prabhupada kept while he was in the boat. And now it's published and available. So he was reasoning like this. In America, it'd be different than a sannyasi interacting with pious and influential Indian gentlemen. He'd be no one, a foreigner, and there was no tradition of sadhus, no temples, no free ashrams. But so going to visit people and ask for some assistance, that's what he did while he was in India. But what's going to happen across the other side of the ocean? But when he thought of the books he was bringing, transcendental knowledge in English, he became confident. When he met someone in America, he would give him a flyer. Notice there's the flyer. Prabhupada looks very stern and serious. And he even spells Bhagavatam differently than he later spelled the Bhagavatam. And India's message of peace and goodwill. If you're going to America and you don't know American people, that's a nice way to introduce it. India's message of peace and goodwill. That can mean anything, right? But that's what he did. And then on board, Jaladuta. Today the captain arranged, this is Janmashtami day, on board. He arranged for a meeting on board the Jaladuta on account of Janmashtami day, and I spoke for an hour on the philosophy and teachings of Lord Sri Krishna. All the officers attended the meeting, and there was distribution of prasadam. The matter was radiographed to Srimati Sumati Rararji in Bombay. The ship is stranded on the Arabian Sea, about 4 miles away from the coast. Something happened and they got stuck. Then later on in the journey, his Bhagavatams were loaded at Cochin, and he makes note of how that was done. 5 cases loaded onto the cargo ship. And so there's his wonderful 3-volume Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1. And in his diary, this is what shows happened. At one point he had a heart attack. He had a second heart attack. So no entries. And later, along with just regular old seasickness, headache and nausea, vomiting and dizziness and hunger and no energy, it's not easy. Prabhupada one evening with a few disciples at his feet reminisced about how he had come to America in 1965 and had suffered 2 heart attacks at sea. They say that anyone who gets a 3rd heart attack, they must expire. I had 2 heart attacks on the ship. And then, New York, 3rd one, paralyzed. Left side was paralyzed. I do not know how I was saved. And one girl, the captain's wife, she studied astrology. She said, Swami, if you can survive your 70th year, then you'll live for 100 years. So much for astrologers. Whoops. Now, notice in the painting, there's a ship in the background. There's the Jaladuta, and behind the Jaladuta, there's another big ship. There's Radha and Krishna and avatars of the Lord and so forth and so on. That same night that he had this heart attack, he had a dream. It's described in Lilamrita. And the dream, in his dream, he saw this giant boat, and the giant boat was being rowed by the avatars. Here's another painting showing the same, making sure that he made it to the shore. There's Prabhupada and Krishna in the very front in the Bhagavatam, etc. They ensured that he would make it all the way to America. So we're not there yet. September 10. Our date is not yet, or we're past September 10. This is, Radhanath Maharaj read this today on the boat. I'm feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan. And my Lord, Sri Govinda, Gopinath, Radha Damodar, the only solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I am tasting, the nectarine of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. I've left Bharat Bhumi just to execute the order of Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but I have taken up the risk, this is after his 2 heart attacks, just to carry out the order of his divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy, so far away from Vrindavan. So that's on the 10th September, and here's the 13th September. Today, I've disclosed my mind to my companion, Lord Sri Krishna. There is a Bengali poem made by me today in this connection. And there's the poem in Prabhupada's own handwriting. He kept the poem in Bengali. The captain told me they had never such calmness of the Atlantic Ocean. I said, it's Lord Krishna's mercy. His wife asked me to come back again with him so they could cross again in a calm Atlantic Ocean. If Atlantic would have shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. But Lord Krishna has taken charge of the ship. So here we are on the fateful day, September 17th, 1965. This is later Prabhupada's visiting the Boston Harbor at Commonwealth Pier, where we had a little gathering today. And they arrived at 5:30 in the morning. Now there's a little document that Mitra Sen Prabhu has. We just need to receive it from Mitra Sen somehow or another. Is Mitra Sen here?
I just got here, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You somehow help us get a copy. We'll circulate it to the congregation members here. But the document that we're going to send you says Prabhupada came off the boat with the captain, and the captain gave a little tour to sanctify the Commonwealth Pier area, the little where he took them in Boston. So, that was the first arrival date. And in addition, Prabhupada wrote this. I'm going to read the verses. This is the text, but I'm going to read the verses of what Prabhupada wrote. This is Markine Bhagavat Dharma. I'm keeping track of time because I want to keep the schedule. But it's worth taking some time to read these words. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. But I guess you have some business here, otherwise why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion, absorbed in material life. They think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it. Mission impossible. But I know your causeless mercy can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? Oh Lord, I'm simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. All living entities have come under the control of the illusory energy by your will, and therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. The words of Srimad Bhagavatam are your incarnation, and if a sober person repeatedly receives it with submissive oral reception, then he will be able to understand your message. He will become liberated from the influence of the modes of ignorance and passion, and thus all inauspicious things accumulated in the core of the heart will disappear. How will I make them understand the message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I'm seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. Somehow or other, Lord Krishna, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it's up to you to make me a success or failure as you like. O spiritual master of all the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So, if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. I am sure that when the transmitted message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel gladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. And the conclusion. O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So, if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance, make me dance. O Lord, make me dance as you like. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I am designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. So there we are. Prabhupada has arrived. This is his prayer to Krishna, his friend, Krishna. And from the Boston Harbor, in a day's journey, he made it on the 38th day to New York. And as you've heard many, many times, he's walking down the gangplank in New York Harbor, and he said, I didn't know whether to turn left or right. There was no one there to receive him. No tengu chabo. He had no money in his pocket. And, in New York City, and, it's a rough place, New York City. Mission impossible. He's got his Bhagavatams in the book, in the boat. And where do you go at the end of the gangplank? Just somehow he made it to the Port Authority and got on a bus. How he got from bus fare, I don't know. The bus fare to Butler, Pennsylvania, and met Gopal Agarwal and Sally Agarwal in Little Bridge. And stayed there for a little while, and then that wasn't his purpose in coming to America, staying in Butler, Pennsylvania. So he came back to New York with no place to stay and no money and nothing. Nothing. Kind of scary, but fearless. Not foolish, just fearless. And somehow Krishna will take care of him, and Krishna somehow took care of him with hardship and many other things. So we're deeply indebted. This is a day for honoring all over in many parts of the world. There are big festivals that we just had today here in Boston, but all outside of Boston, all over the world, big festivals honoring what we're honoring here. And it's nice to be here, honoring Prabhupada's arrival in Boston so many years ago, carrying the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now I have 4.5 minutes, so I'm going to say one more thing. Prabhupada explained that many of his disciples were given the same instruction that he was given by Bhaktisiddhanta. It wasn't like many persons. And one of the very primary efforts that Bhaktisiddhanta made during his time was sending 2 of the very prominent sannyasis, Ban Maharaj and another, to go to England, English-speaking England, that had ruled India for so long, and they had support. They had people waiting for them on the other side. They had funding. The plan was, the executed plan was that the many Gaudiya Math temples each gave a donation, and they had something in their pocket, some money in their pocket, and somebody receiving them on the other end. Prabhupada didn't have any of that. But the departure, there was a big festival when they finally went, but the departure was delayed because Bhaktisiddhanta wanted something, and it wasn't ready yet. And what he wanted was the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So there was one professor who was writing the book, and it wasn't done yet. Professor in Orissa. And so the book finally became just Sri Krishna, Sri Chaitanya. So when Prabhupada came with the mandate of taking the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, it was Srimad Bhagavatam, because the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. The teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Seamless. And notice, in the introduction section is the life of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada knew exactly what he was doing. And he was following the template that was given to him in his own way, but empowered to carry it forward in a way that Krishna inspired him to carry it forward. And what a gift to the world, to us, followers, and to the world that are somewhere or another, they'll receive a book, or somewhere or another they'll hear the chanting, or somewhere or another they'll take prasadam, or somewhere or another something. And our in exchange with them should be, appropriate as a Vaishnava to someone who's, struggling in the world. It's a nice service. It's our life. So I'm going to end and keep the timing as I was asked to do. And so whatever's next, whoever's our MC can take the microphone and tell everybody what you'd like them to do, because I want to honor, salute to the schedule. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi.